All right, so it's about that time. It is final project time for Core Teaching Skills Online. It's been a long semester, but it's been a good semester. I'm gonna do like a YouTube-esque video for my final project, and I'm gonna be going through some misconceptions and growth that has come from those misconceptions. Then a retrospect of my time in the classroom, and then I'll finish up, of course, with a conclusion to wrap things up. So without further ado, I hope you have your popcorn ready and your grade books handy, because I'm gonna get into it. So one of my biggest misconceptions was how open lesson planning really is. You, as the teacher, really come up with the lesson. It's so open, which can be a good thing, but when you don't know how to create a lesson plan, it's actually pretty hard to do. I remember the first time we were supposed to create a lesson plan in the course, it was pick a subject, pick a grade level, and follow these steps to create a lesson plan. But you have to create the actual activity that you're doing. That being said, thanks to the Core Teaching Skills online modules, I learned how to, outline a lesson plan and have some good step-by-steps, so at least it's not so open and so confusing on, what to do. So think of things like timing, how long should this take? How long should this take? How long should the entire lesson take? Materials that you'll need, vocabulary that the students know, what the students already know, what the students should know, how to assess the students. Is it going to be formative? Is it going to be summative? It's usually all of them. Different accommodations and modifications for your students for the lesson plan. How am I going to introduce this lesson? How am I going to close this lesson? How am I going to encourage my students to take the learning that they learned in this lesson and apply it somewhere else? Is it going to be homework? Maybe. And also, of course, the actual activity that you do. What are you and the students doing? It's not only going to be times table sheets for the entire year, but learning things in this course, the I do, we do, you do models, the scaffolding, the Bloom's taxonomy. It really helps learn how to create a lesson and facilitate development and learning on a cognitive level. And you can also think about the different areas of development while you make these lessons, thanks to these tools. So how are my students growing, not only cognitively but emotionally and socially? Is it going to be a group work activity? Is it going to be some sort of presentation where they have to learn time management as well? So that was my first big misconception, but of course the growth that came out of it. My second big misconceptions were assessments. They are much more frequent than I ever really anticipated them being. What I imagined assessments were when I got into this course was times tables and multiple choice questions, sometimes an occasional written response. But assessments happen all the time in the classroom. Think about formative versus summative assessment. Which one happens more and which one is more effective? We covered a lot of this in our courses thanks to the different learning modules that we went through over the course of the year. Something I found interesting, though, was looking at my own childhood in retrospect. A lot of the moments that I look back on fondly with my teachers were them taking part in formative assessment, right? When they were kind of walking around talking to me, kind of looking over the tests, even saying good morning in the morning, or have a good night when class was over. It's crazy how you get a sneak peek behind a curtain that you otherwise would never have if you didn't enroll in, an education major. You get a peek behind the curtain of what was actually happening with your teachers during your childhood. It's very interesting, and it's a huge facilitator of growth in my understanding and perspective on education. My third biggest misconception was how much of a role teachers play in the community that they are a part of. When I signed up for elementary education as my major, obviously I want to teach and, I like hanging out with kids and stuff, but I never realized that you're kind of a micro celebrity. Everybody in the community knows you, especially the longer you've been there. Oh, well, My oldest went through their class, and now my youngest is going through their class. So what I learned is, through things like the ethics modules, that a good teacher understands their role in the community. It doesn't just go clock in at 7:30 and leave at 4:30. They understand that they help facilitate community values, especially the longer that they've been there. You are helping to shape an entire generation, at least in your micro community. You help influence some of these values that you want to instill in the classroom. I never realized that, so that was another piece of growth coming from a misconception. Moving on to retrospect in the classroom. What do I know now that I wish I knew back then? Quite a lot, surprisingly. I can think of a million shortcomings on my own accord. Things that I did that, I wish I didn't do. Luckily, nothing too extreme, just mistakes that if I didn't participate in this course, I would probably continue to make into my time as a teacher. I think a lot of times, a lot of instances of ego battles with students, you are not going to win those. I learned that in this course. You're not going to win a battle of stubbornness. Are you kidding? But why was I trying to? Why was I fighting with a student that was misunderstood more than just trying to, be a nuisance? I didn't know that back then. I know that now. I think about my own personal health. How important is it for me to get adequate sleep, to get adequate nutrition, exercise, to remain vigilant, but also remain patient and sympathetic to my students? I didn't realize how important that was. Obviously, we all work jobs, or I'm sure most of us work jobs at least, where you can get 4 hours of sleep, go to the job the next day, and you're fine. Obviously, it's not great, but it's not horrible. Or you can eat 4 donuts in the morning, and yeah, you'll probably feel kind of crummy, but you're not gonna have a horrible day at work. But when you are just interacting with students on a day-to-day basis who are, a lot of times gonna challenge you and your perspectives, which is part of the reason I like the idea of this job, it can also be very draining when you haven't gotten enough sleep, you haven't eaten well, you don't exercise, you're just trying to survive the day. You can't as a teacher. You have to be on top of your physical health to be a good teacher for the students and community and everything I talked about previously. Another thing that I didn't even realize we were doing until I took part in this course was positively reinforcing negative behavior. One of the biggest things that I accidentally did, and I did it frequently that I wish I never did, was positively reinforce negative behavior. Unwanted behavior is really hard to manage, and a lot of teachers that we've seen have not wanted to teach. They leave the career in the field entirely because they don't want to try to deal with it. But that is one of the biggest parts of teaching, and part of your core teaching skill is managing a classroom. Accidentally reinforcing their negative behavior by positively interacting with them is never going to help. And I didn't realize that. Obviously, you don't want to always punish their behavior, but things like extinction work a lot better than responding with positivity when it's a behavior that you don't necessarily want to see. Obviously, every case is different, and things like the ethics modules have really helped learn the different applications of what we learned. But for the most part, positively reinforcing negative behavior is something that I do and a lot of people do that you really shouldn't do, because obviously that's going to continue to encourage the students to take part in that behavior. Not good. All right, we have finally reached the conclusion, sadly, for my final and core teaching skills online. One of my favorite aspects of this course was learning how to plan for the unknown. Things like the scenario modules and lesson planning have helped me realize that sometimes you're gonna have to accommodate on the fly and modify on the fly to things that otherwise you've never experienced before. The veteran teachers are just really good at adapting to new scenarios. They haven't seen everything. They just know what to do when they don't know what to do. I really appreciated that aspect of this course, and it was one of the things that I really hope I can take with me into the future, learning how to have a lesson plan that can accommodate to new situations, as well as the scenario modules and ethics modules that we went through, learning, oh my gosh, this actually can happen sometimes. There can be nightmare scenarios that don't really ever have a clear right or wrong way to go about things, and the code of conduct of your district might not even go over it. What are you going to do when you don't know what to do? Well, that was a big feature of this course, and one that I appreciated because it's a realistic portrayal of what will happen in the classroom. The longer you're in the field and the more of a vet you become, the more likely it is that you are going to be faced with a situation that otherwise would be impossible to circumvent. It's just part of the job, right? So learning how to manage behaviors that makes a lot of teachers leave the field was another important part of this course for me, and I really hope I can take a lot of this with me moving on. I brought these up before, and I'm going to bring them up again. It was easily my favorite part of this course. The ethics modules. I loved these, especially for the behavior aspect of them. It teaches you what to look for. While we only had to respond to one of the three of them, you read through them and you kind of think to yourself while you're trying to decide which one, what would I do? Can this even happen? Yes. What would I do? I don't know. It's a good exercise for something that is inevitably going to happen. And finally, just like any other field on the planet, learning how to collaborate and work with peers is so important for success in the field that you chose. The discussion posts do help you learn and talk to peers, but more importantly, it helps you learn their perspectives and share your own ideas. Sometimes in the field, you're going to get into an argument, a disagreement with another teacher, another peer of yours, and understanding their perspective is going to really help you come to a, conclusion with them and meet in the middle. It doesn't matter what it's about. What matters is that you're able to work with them and share ideas that otherwise you wouldn't agree with. And things like the discussion posts do help learn and, facilitate interaction. And I try to pick out ones that I don't agree with to figure out and practice, responding to somebody that necessarily I wouldn't respond to. It feels more intuitive to respond to somebody that I agree with. I totally agree with you on every single point that you made, but it's more important, I think, to respond to somebody that you don't agree with. Well, have you thought about this? I like your perspective on this, but I disagree with you on this. It's very important because it's going to happen in the real world. Why not practice and learn how to do that in school? Without what I've learned in this course, I would be a worse teacher than I am now. And I hope as I go through the rest of my years in college, I learn how to become the best teacher I can possibly be. And I hope that I can really take a lot of these lessons with me, not only throughout college, but throughout my entire professional career. So thank you. My name is Nick Waldvogel. I made all the music myself, so thank you for listening to it. And if you really like it, thank you. And I'll see you guys next semester in courses that we all share. So, goodbye.